I'm here with Vincent Cooper, a local San Antonio author and poet. Thank you so much, Vinny, for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you to Anto Cultural Arts for thinking of me.
So I'm really surprised that we haven't bumped into each other sooner, but I was looking back, and the first time I actually met you was when you were reading at one of Jacinto's Salón de Arte gatherings, when he graciously hosted one of your book reading in his home. So during that reading, you were sharing one of your Uncle Danny's letters, which really hit home for me, because at the time I did have a family member who was incarcerated, and that reading just really resonated with me, and it reminded me so much of the importance of just simply reaching out and how much our letters mean to them, you know, when they're there.
Yeah. So with Danny, I remember him as a kid here in San Antonio, and he was in his 20s, I think, early 30s. So, you know, he was an adult, and he was always, you know, like the center of attention, and all the very charismatic, and that was the only thought I had of him. Later on, when I moved to Vegas, my mother and I moved to Las Vegas for my high school years. Danny had gotten locked up, and we wrote letters back then because we didn't have those big old cell phones, the two-size cell phones, and we wrote letters. So I thought I could write to him, and I did, and I thought it was going to be weird, you know, and he wrote back right away, something short. It's in the book, actually, and it was very short, and then after that it became like a weekly thing where I would write like 7 pages and he'd reply, and we did this basically the whole time through high school, the whole time he was locked up as well. So he saved me. I mean, those letters were great. They were, you know, at the time, getting me through a lot of teenage issues, you know. So it really helped, and I was forever grateful. When he got out, you know, the hope was that he was going to be great. You know, he was 40 years old, I think, when he got out, roughly, and I think he tried really hard. He moved to LA, and he stayed with some relatives there. You know, he got his license, he started working, and then, I don't know, the West Side called him, you know. He came back to the West Side, and he stayed there until the end. I would go see him as much as I could. I bought a house on the West Side to live close to him, or at least so that he would consider living with me in case he didn't have a place to stay. But it didn't turn out that way. I would be over there daily, almost, buying him cigarettes, buying him beer, just being with him. But his health was deteriorating pretty bad, and it was one of those things where we thought it could have happened at any time, but we don't really think that it's going to happen, especially with like the older generations. They all like sort of lived to their 90s, you know, or late 80s, and we thought that was going to happen here, and it didn't. And you know, unfortunately, he passed away, and I want to say he was around 56.
Oh, wow.
56 years old, and you know, it's a damn shame. I really wish he was around, and he was kind of like the heart and soul here of the family at the time, you know.
It seemed like he was a father figure type to you, giving you advice in his letters. One that I really liked was where he wrote, "Just try to have a good life and think twice when you're making decisions. Sure, you're going to mess up a few times, but you can learn from your mistakes and you can avoid messing up in the future." He was coming from a good place, you know. It's like, you know, for him to to give you that advice. You know, it's like you said, you know, when you started writing him, it was a little awkward, but you know, I think he probably saw himself. You know, at least that's how it came across when I was reading that.
Yeah, these uncles and aunts were of this time were very poetic. Uh, Danny, to know Danny not in jail and sober, he was constantly drinking, uh, a storyteller, you know, kind of everybody gather around and he had jokes and stories, unlimited. It never ended. And everybody just kind of leaned on him and all that. So uh, it's amazing because some people know that his dark side, you know, and he wasn't there for his kids. His kids ended up in jail as well, you know. Um, it's so hard with these men who are considered toxic that he could be that way for me, but he wasn't that way for the others, or you know, for his own son. Um, he he was very selfish. Um, you know, he did some very bad things to people, you know, physically, and he wasn't a great husband at all. You know, just a lot. So when these men go to jail and they sober up and they have time to collect themselves and give the best advice they can.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how his letters impacted you in your life. Looking from the outside, looking in, it looks like, you know, he had a really positive impact on your life.
Yes, I mean, first thing is we wanted to really emulate our uncles. At the time, we thought they were the coolest guys around. You know, they were walking around shirtless and they had tattoos all over and a bandana in their head and a Miller Lite in their hand and a cigarette in the other. And, you know, for whatever reason, this was like a hero in my mind. You know, this is what was cool. And those letters changed everything. I was, I was the whiniest teenager ever. I mean, I was really losing it. I didn't have many friends, uh, you know, and he was my guy, and I would practically run to the mailbox just to get the letter. I have them all here, um, and they were very healing for me, and I needed it. I really needed it because I did not like Vegas. I did not like my time there at all. So it really helped.
So Vinny, when did you realize that you wanted to become a writer?
You know, it would happen in the sake of grieving because I grew up with the Ramon family, which was my aunt Esther, my uncle Rich. I've mentioned him because he's going to come up in the book a lot, the new book, because he's a Marine. My cousin Adrian and my cousin Nuno. My cousin Nuno was or is an artist, and he was kind of like the first to do things in the family, you know, to kind of promote himself and go further with his art in LA. He was in the first class, I think, of the School of the Arts in LA. And then Adrian was a musician, or he is a musician, a saxophone player, and he went to the School of the Arts as well. And there, you know, in Chicano households, there's always this kind of like, what talent do you have, and what kind of a competitive thing. And I never really had anything, um, and I didn't even think about what I could do. Then my uncle Jody lived with us. He when my uncle Tony passed away or got killed, Danny kind of fled, and Jody fled to California with us, and then Danny went to jail, right? But nobody wanted to be here in fear of getting killed by the same people who killed Tony,
Mm.
right? So Jody went to California to stay with us for a little bit, and he was the first one I connected with of all my uncles because he was a brutal man, and He had contracted HIV, I believe. So this was his, I didn't know that this was like his final time. You know, it never hit me. So I was spending time with him as much as I could, and then he was picked up by the police and brought back to Galveston, third time, and he didn't want to tell anybody there that he was dying of AIDS, so he just died. Like he was collapsed in his cell. They took him to the medical, and he just died there. And when we got the word in California that he had died, like I was inconsolable. I could not handle it whatsoever. I was 12, I think, at the time. So we flew down and saw him here in San Antonio where he was buried. And from that, I started writing. I started writing the moments that we had together. I started writing about San Antonio and how we missed it. And I haven't stopped, and I was 12. So it really came from that death of my Uncle Jody.
Well, your poems are really visual, which I love that. You know, as I was reading through your book, like I can picture myself there in like in the moment. How do you describe your approach to writing?
Well, with Zarzamora, I can only write with a lived experiences. I rarely read poetry about random things, you know, like flowers or the sun or whatever. So I want to write the story of my life, and it's coming out in poetry. So I I remember everything. I remember the last time I saw my father when I was 4. Everything from the smell of the grass to the weather, you know, pores on the skin. I remember everything. And the first time I met my great grandparents, um, who uh, were here in the West Side, and the look they gave me, the red in their eyes. Like I don't know why I kept all that in me, but I did, and I use it now in the book. My family always said I was a weird kid. I wasn't like the others, you know, just go play. You know, I wanted to watch The Godfather with all the adults in the living room, you know, while my cousins played, you know, travesuras outside or something, you know. They're like, go be a kid, and I was just not that way. I was very observant. Uh, everything about San Antonio and the West Side. When I was here, I just soaked it in, and I carried it all with me, and I didn't know what to do with it until the writing happened. Um, Nowadays, I need some music to get going, maybe a little drive out the West Side and remember some things, you know, and get into the mood of writing. Because, I mean, I'm busy now. I kids sitting on my shoulders, you know, I'm working, we're doing other things. So, but I used to listen to a ton of music. Um, Elliott Smith, the Beatles, Jackson Brown, Bad Religion, just to get into the mood, you know, and then start writing. So it's either music, a drive, photographs help a lot. Recently, I asked my mom for some photographs, and she said, "We don't have any. We never took pictures of you," which is hilarious because she's lying. There's there's boxes of photographs. She just doesn't want me to have them. Uh, but yeah, I used to get into the mood that way. Now I'm more on the go. So I'll have my cell phone and, you know, type something up real quick and save for later.
Are there any authors or that influence your work, or any books that you feel influence how you write?
Absolutely. So I'm I'm into musicians a lot. So you know, from Kurt Cobain to the Beatles. But as a kid, as a high schooler, I read the Beat Poets, which is, you know, Ginsberg, uh, Jack Kerouac. But I really like Charles Bukowski more. And my dog is named Charles Bukowski. He's a German Shepherd. Um, I know a lot of people don't like Bukowski because he's very toxic, or was very toxic. But I liked his style of writing, uh, and I preferred that more. So their writings were influential. Uh, as far as books, it's changed now. I'm a little bit more geared towards Chicano and Chicana writers. So Gloria Anzaldua's book, Borderlands, is for me the best book ever. Um, and some of the newer poets and all that. So I would say right now I'm stuck here listening to more Chicano and Chicano writers because we didn't have that. We were given, The Catcher in the Rye, or uh, some sort of classic novel that we're told this is what great literature is. And we read those books and we don't get these other books, So I'm into that right now. And I want to go further back to like the 1900s and see what kind of literature we had then and celebrate, those authors who have kind of fallen in the wayside here.
So how long does it take you to write a book, would you say?
When I had the chapbook come out, Where the Reckless Ones Come to Die by Aztlan Libre Press, when I was writing, probably in the early 2000s, I had this thing where I had to write at least 50 poems a year. If I could do that, then I'm still doing it. So I collected over the years just notebooks and notebooks of poems. I thought I had them right here accessible, but I still have them. And I was like, what am I going to do with all this? What's it all for? And it's really bad writing, but, that's what I felt at the time. So in my 20s, I was still too shy, like, don't look at me. And like, what are you doing over there in the corner, man? Everybody's out here. I'm writing poetry. I'm dark. And they, well, let's hear it. Let's hear what you got. And I'm like, no, man, I'm shy. You wouldn't understand. And like, all right, whatever. Then finally, I would share, and people are like, man, this is great. I would buy I would buy a book of this. And I would share here and share there until I was about 32 years old. I finally said, I'm going to submit something. And I submitted poetry to this place in Austin, and they took it. And after a while, I'm like submitting some more, and it was getting accepted. And I thought, it's easy. So I kept submitting, and I like the first 8 things I submitted were accepted. And I was like, man, I'm on a roll. This is great. And then I got like 30 consecutive rejections from other places. I'm like, oh man, maybe I should pull back. So I knew I wanted to write something about the West Side of San Antonio, which is sacred to me. I wrote poems nonstop, not just of my family, but everything I saw from the Casiano courts to the Alazan courts, everything, and people, random things, homeless people. And I just kept collecting them. And then I added the poems that are in Zarzamora. And I had this manuscript. I didn't know it was a manuscript, but it was at least 90 pages, I think, 100 pages. And I'm like, well, okay, how do I do this now? And I literally Googled all this. And I said, you know what? Aztlan Libre Press is in San Antonio. At first, I was looking at Wings Press, which was by Bryce Milligan. I went to his house, and I thought maybe I shouldn't go in, and that was kind of creepy to just kind of walk up and be like, hey, I'm a poet, publish me. And so I pulled back, and I had Anissa and Juan on Twitter, And they're like, yeah, just submit it. And I remember submitting what was Zarzamora to them. And then after a while, Anissa said, yeah, we want to do it. We want to do it. And then like almost a year passed, and they came back to me with Reckless. And it was just 8 poems. And I was really confused. I was like, man, I know I sent you like 50 poems. And they're like, yeah, but we want to do this, and they had a different cover. It was not this cover, which is Raul Salinas, the poet. It was a mural there on Guadalupe, and we decided on that. So my answer is, I had no idea what I was doing, and when Juan said, I want to do a chapbook, I was even more confused than ever, because I'm like, what is a chapbook? And I didn't know that it was basically like a sample, a poetry sample book. And he was all about it. And I was like, all right, well, I've kind of waited too long. I'm very impatient. And we went with it. So that was my first official thing, as far as a collection of poems. I had already published single poems, to places that will accept single poems, standalone poems. But this is like a sample collection. So then now I have all these other poems, which are Zarzamora. I added the letters to Danny. I actually had more letters. And everybody I showed the book to was like, no, you got to take out some of these letters, dude. That it sounds more like the the biography of Danny Rivas. And I said, okay. So I actually took out 3 letters. So I think there's 5 or 6 in them already in the book. And I wanted Juan and them to publish this. I really did want them. I asked them. They were very firm that they were not ever going to publish poets. It's too much drama with them, too much ego, not enough money, honestly. So I started looking out. And when you submit, everybody has their guidelines. You go to, like Arte Público press or any press, and they'll say, this is the format we want it in. This is the page count we need it in, double spaced, whatever it may be. They have their criteria there. So you have to make your manuscript, to fit that criteria. They'll just reject it. They won't even look at it, And in their case, they didn't even look at Zarzamora at all. They just rejected it right away. So it was a learning lesson, to, they have the guidelines there for you. Some places want a 50-page book. Some places want 80 pages or more, So it was a learning experience for somebody who just didn't know what he was doing.
Do you ever see yourself maybe writing something different or another topic?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in my teens, early 20s, I was always writing about religious stuff, like fictional things, save the earth type writing, climate change. And, they were good. They gave me gratification at the time. And I really wish I still had those. I think my mom threw them away. She thought I was kind of like disturbed in high school. And, so yeah, I think, I could do that. I'm not done with this yet. So like the new manuscript, which is of my time in the military. And then after that, I'm also working on my memoir to go over the 4 men, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and me. So after that, maybe go off and see what else is out there that I might write about.
What does your writing environment look like?
And in high school, it was actually really cool because I lived in Vegas, and before it was getting gentrified, my apartment, or the apartment we lived in, the view was just desert and mountains out the window, and then my line of drinks. My mother worked graveyard at the Mirage, so she was out all night. I was up all night writing, and this was my view, my look of things. I wish I had something like that still, but it's obviously changed over the years to, just a messy desk and, the TV on mute, music on. Uh, Now it's a much smaller, I don't even know if this is even 2 feet, but I'm like in a corner nook of my bedroom. And if I get a chance to write at all, I'll try to write out 10 pages worth of material. But it's gone from a, huge desk, mess all over it, unpaid bills, pictures, coffee stains, this whole messy look, to this very compact look of mine now.
So do you want to share a snippet from your Zarzamora book?
Sure. Let's see. All right. This is called Sandia. Pelon, Chato, and me waking up to burning bacon and eggs sizzling in a pan at the house on Potosi Street. A shirtless uncle is singing. Grandma is wrapping his tacos in a brown bag. He puts them in his pocket as he shuffles off. He was our Robin Hood on heroin. And we're in the bathroom, taking turns brushing our teeth and washing our faces. I wait for them to finish, holding a bottle of Lucky Tiger lanolin. Elbowing our way into the kitchen, Grandpa stomps his foot and snaps his fingers, yelling in Spanish to behave and be quiet. Grandma serves papas con huevos on a small plate. The sooner we're done, the sooner we can go outside and play, or go across the street to Casiano Park and be free of chores for the day. We'll dare each other while exploring the arroyo filled with Pampers, grocery carts, fish, and beer bottles. Teenagers ditch class and meet under the bridge, smoke pot, and lose their virginity. We sit and watch while drinking the big reds that an older, junky cousin dropped off in passing. We challenge each other all day long with our fists, legs, and brains. We go from friends to enemies and enemies to friends, just in time to see her wave us in from the house. There's sandia on the table, cut up into several pieces. We pass the salt and run back to the park like dogs with bones, running away to be alone. Black seeds stuck on our cheeks, laughing at the mischievous things we did that day, and this was our reward. As the sun sets, we scare each other with stories of La Llorona sightings around the city. We talk about children pushing a car over some train tracks, too little, too late. We slowly chase each other back to the house in ripped jeans, dirt, sweat faces, exhausted. We shower together and laugh at each other's penises and go to our room. We'll stare out the window to see a woman in a white dress sitting on the middle swing, howling like a banshee. The sound of a train in the distance means it's time to go to sleep. I'll stay up looking at the moon and say to myself, I never want this to end.
Writing is just so visual. Like I can actually just, see myself and just like picture it as you're reading. So if you had to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
You really caught me in a different mood today, but complicated, friendly, ambitious. 10 years ago, I really wanted something, and it was just not in the cards. And I mention it in Zarzamora because um, my uncle Mike, who does appear in it, he was kind of like the strength of us, and he died in 2009, and he was in his 50s as well, and it was pretty sudden, and it hurt us really bad because he was very charismatic as well, but he was probably the most legit. You know, he always had a good job. He was a Navy veteran, Chicano veteran from Vietnam. You know, he was a handsome guy too, very funny, and he had a stroke. He was diabetic, and he had a stroke, and he never recovered from it. It took him about 2 weeks to die in a hospital, and that he was the place where we'd gather. You know, he was able to. He was like a bartender where he would able to manage egos and tell stories and keep people together. He like he gave everybody so much respect. It's crazy. You know, we all felt like we were somebody to him, and yet he was the hero. You know, he was the real hero. So he was very positive for us, and I guess what I wanted was to be him. I really wanted to be like him and have the house that everybody meets at and barbecue and everybody comes over and kind of the kids, the cousins, you know, we all got together and it would be like I'm carrying that tradition for him. But I learned right away that that's not the case, that my family didn't feel that way about me. And it never happened. So there's a lot of bitterness there, and uh, just it just never happened, and it kept going this way too. Now we're all texters, you know. We have text relationships, and that's as good as it's gonna get.
Yeah, and we're definitely in different times right now too. That just makes that impossible. So what do you like to do when you're not writing?
I like cooking. I'm trying not to eat any meat anymore. I feel better inside. I'm also diabetic, so it's better anyway. I love to cook. So I'm usually trying to cook for Victoria and the kids, but she's a great cook too. I like maybe I'm a freak, like a Virgo or something, but I have to clean. I have to do something, right? I have to, you know, even if I have a bunch of stray cats on the porch, but I still have to make it look nice for them too. You know, I can't. I have to organize something. Um, that might be shocking to some people because of the mess that I usually have been in. But I like doing yard work, landscaping stuff, and cooking. Um, I didn't go out much before COVID. You know, you really had to drag me out to go somewhere. But cooking and yard work for sure.
Would you like to share something from your book that you're working on right now?
Yes, I'd love to. So the new, I actually had written a bunch of poems right around when Zarzamora came out. I was like, all right, I got to start working on the next thing. And I started writing. Of course, Trump was elected. And before he was elected, I remember telling Victoria, I said, he's going to win. I hate it, but he's going to win. And we immediately started thinking about how bad the next 4 years were going to be. And we were like sobbing that night about it. Um, so a bunch of poetry came out. And I had always written about my time in the military, which was a very negative time. And I wrote a bunch of poems, but they were all very angry. They were very political, and I even submitted it to a contest that I didn't know they didn't accept it, and I pulled back and I looked at it again and I thought, this is just angry writing. This is just somebody that's not in the right place. It's not poetry. So I put it aside, and recently a professor said, "Hey, do you still have any of those marine poems?" He's working on an anthology of Chicano poet Marines or those who served. And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I worked on some, and I sent him a couple, and that made more poetry come out. It reminded me of all these things, and I started to look up some of the information from all the documents of the time when I was in the Marines, and it was wild. And I remembered everything and situations, and now I've got a ton of poetry out of it, which is great. So yes, I'd like to read maybe one or two. I have it on my screen. So this is called 9/11. In San Antonio, on leave, I turn on the 50-inch TV. It's New York. News channel muted. The coffee maker has roaches escaping the molded coffee grains. Smashing a few with my hand, then wiping off with my shirt. I clean out the coffee maker in the sink and create a filter with napkins left over from a taqueria. In the cup, I pour expired Borden milk, 5 spoons of sugar, then brewed U-Ban coffee. Sitting on the couch, changing the channel, each one showing the tower on fire. Then another plane collides into the World Trade Center. The people inside jumping out of windows to their deaths. I knew you shouldn't have joined. Now you're going to war. Called my Theo in California, Vietnam veteran, laughs and says, "You're not going to war. Call your recruiter." No answer. After 9/11, I flew into Palm Springs, picked up by Corporal Macias in a blue Volkswagen Bug to 29 Palms. So this is the fleet. I am introduced to the Marines I will work with as a Marine from PCP. Are we going to war, I asked. No, not you. Hey, but you made it, right? That's one. This is called Master Sergeant. I want you out of my Marine Corps, you piece of shit. You can have your honorable discharge. We all know the truth. You'll be a hero to your kids and friends and fat as a fucking house. I left 29 Palms in a brown Chevy Blazer. No fight, no jail time. Heading to Dallas, Texas. Somewhere in the Panhandle, roadkill on the I-10 freeway. Armadillos, deers, and dogs. Rednecks in hunter's camouflage. Car windows rolled down. Wind too strong to chew. Blowing away layers of marine camouflage. Government orders. Non-judicial punishment. Suspended male driver decals. Maxed out credit cards. DUIs. Master Sergeant Castillo smirking in the rearview mirror. We lock eyes. Red lights flashing. A policeman signals me off the freeway. Writes up a speeding ticket. Where you headed? Dallas. Good luck, Devil Dog. So those are quick poems.
Wow, those are great, Benny. Thank you again for joining and doing this, meeting with me today. Just to wrap it up, if there was one piece of advice you could give to someone that was aspiring to be a writer, what would it be?
Read everything. Read as much as you can. Read every day if you can. Don't get hung up on publishing your work. That's not your goal yet. Read everything, write, edit, write, and if you feel that it needs to be published in the world, go for it. But you have to read everything. You simply have to. There's so much work out there that's been done, and a lot of it is not read, and I would recommend to read as much as you possibly can.
Well, thank you so much. Again, this is Vincent Cooper. Just make sure to check out Zarzamora. And what was the name of your new book?
Infidelis.
And do you know when that'll be coming out?
Oh, no. I'm still writing it.
Still writing. Okay.
Hopefully next year.
Next year. Well, thanks again, Vinny. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jan. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody. I love you, Sanato.